When Second Lady Usha Vance and Vice President J.D. Vance announced they were expecting another child at the end of summer, the public reaction was immediate and predictable. Smiling headlines. Polite congratulations. Commentators praising the family values moment, and the symbolism of continuity, stability, and domestic strength at the highest levels of power. But behind the polished press releases and carefully worded statements, the announcement detonated a very different reaction in certain corners of Washington's political and media ecosystem. Because for Erica Kirk, that single pregnancy announcement didn't just ruin a plan. It erased a future she believed she had already started living. And according to multiple insiders, that realization sent her into a spiral that has not yet stopped. This wasn't just about jealousy. This wasn't just about disappointment. This was about timing, ambition, proximity to power, and a narrative collapsing in real time. And when carefully constructed narratives collapse, people don't always retreat quietly. They lash out. The first Second Lady to give birth in office. And why that matters. On paper, the moment was historic. Usha Vance would become the first sitting Second Lady in U.S. history to give birth while in office. Symbolically, it was powerful. The image of a woman balancing motherhood and national leadership responsibilities fit neatly into a story America loves to tell itself. But history doesn't exist in a vacuum. Moments like this don't just create legacies, they rewrite power maps. Because in politics, proximity to power is currency. And motherhood, when framed correctly, becomes armor. Once Usha announced her pregnancy, her position didn't just stabilize. It fortified. She wasn't just the vice president's wife anymore. She became untouchable in a way only optics can achieve. Any attack now risked looking cruel. Any rumor risked appearing opportunistic. Any challenge to the marriage risked public backlash. And that's exactly why the announcement felt catastrophic to Erica Kirk. Because from Erica's perspective, this pregnancy didn't just happen. It arrived at the worst possible moment. Or, depending on who you ask, the most strategic one. Erica Kirk's world begins to fracture. According to people close to Erica, the reaction wasn't quiet sadness. It was rage. Not the kind that explodes instantly, but the kind that simmers, calcifies, and turns into obsession. She had spent months positioning herself, socially, politically, publicly, for what she believed was an inevitable outcome. Her presence in conservative media spaces intensified. Her proximity to J.D. Vance became more visible. Her language subtly shifted. Her body language grew bolder. And then, suddenly, the door slammed shut. Because a fourth child doesn't just signal commitment. It signals permanence. It signals that whatever rumors were circulating, J.D. Vance was choosing Usha publicly, definitively, and irreversibly. And for Erica, that choice felt personal. Why? Because she had already imagined herself standing where Usha stood. The interview that changed everything. To understand why this pregnancy announcement hit Erica so deeply, you have to go back to the interview she gave shortly after Charlie's death. Sitting across from Megyn Kelly, Erica spoke about grief. About loss. About longing. And then she said something that made even her supporters pause. She talked openly about how desperately she had hoped she was pregnant with Charlie's third child. On the surface, it sounded like mourning. Like a widow wishing for one last piece of the man she lost. But to those watching closely, something felt off. Because Erica didn't speak like someone reminiscing. She spoke like someone auditioning sympathy. And sympathy, in politics, is leverage. Was it really about cherishing Charlie's memory? Or was it about soft-launching the next chapter of her public persona? A grieving mother, a symbol of resilience, a conservative woman reborn through loss. A brand. The pregnancy that never came, and the one that did. As time passed, speculation grew. Why did Erica keep returning to the idea of pregnancy? Why did she frame it as something she had been robbed of? Why did she keep invoking it in public appearances? Then came the whispers. Quiet at first. Then louder. People began suggesting that Erica's pregnancy comments weren't about Charlie at all. They were about J.D. That she was laying narrative groundwork. That she was normalizing the idea of herself as a political partner again. That she was positioning herself emotionally and symbolically beside a man who already had national power. And when those comments started gaining traction online, Erica reacted fast. Too fast. She went defensive, dismissive, mocking, which only raised more questions. Because if nothing was there, why react at all? The hug everyone rewatched 100 times. Then came the moment that sealed public suspicion. The hug. Captured on video. Played back endlessly. Usha Vance was sitting in the audience. And Erika Kirk hugged J.D. Vance in front of thousands. Not a polite, brief embrace. A lingering one. And when people slowed the footage down, frame by frame, they noticed something crucial. Erika leaned in. J.D. followed. His posture was reactive, not initiatory. Almost careful. As if he was trying not to embarrass her if pulling away would create its own headline. Erika's body language, however, told a different story. Possessive. Familiar. Comfortable. And this happened right after she publicly compared J.D. to her late husband. Why make that comparison at all? Why draw that line unless you wanted people to connect the dots? Was it grief talking? Or was it something else entirely? A public audition disguised as grief. To critics, the moment felt calculated. As if Erika was holding a public audition for the role Charlie once occupied. And in her mind, J.D. fit the part. Same ideological lane. Same rhetorical style. Same rising star energy. The hug wasn't an accident. It was a signal. And signals matter when power is involved. Laughing it off, and making it worse. When Erika finally addressed the backlash, people expected clarity. An apology, a boundary, a correction. Instead, she laughed. She joked. She minimized. She implied the public was overreacting. But she never actually denied anything. That silence spoke louder than any statement could have. Because when reputations are on the line, people usually retreat. Erika didn't. She doubled down. Even as people questioned her judgment. Even as her leadership at TPUSA came under scrutiny. Even as critics questioned her priorities as a mother. Why risk all of that unless you believed the payoff would be worth it? The moment, it almost worked. And then, briefly, it seemed like Erika might have been right. Usha Vance began to look different in public. Tired. Withdrawn. Detached. J.D.'s energy shifted too. Less warmth. More distance. Suddenly, the rumors didn't seem so far-fetched. People speculated that Usha had discovered something. That the marriage was under strain. That Erika's proximity wasn't accidental. Then a photo circulated. Usha looked exhausted. Aged. Vulnerable. And the internet did what it always does. It filled the gaps. Was she heartbroken? Was she betrayed? Was she holding it together for appearances? For a moment, the narrative leaned away from Usha. And Erika may have thought she was winning. The pregnancy announcement that changed the story. Then came the announcement. Fourth child. End of summer. And just like that, the narrative flipped. Because whatever people thought they saw, whatever rumors had circulated, this announcement rewrote the script. Usha wasn't losing. She was expanding. Her family. Her legitimacy. Her unassailable position. And suddenly, Erika was left exposed. Receipts, rage, and a last-ditch strategy. According to insiders, Erika didn't take the news quietly. She began gathering receipts. Messages. Memories. Interpretations. Anything that could reassert control over the narrative. Because when you lose the future you thought was guaranteed, revenge starts to look like justice. But here's the irony. The more Erika threatens to expose, the more she centers Usha as the winner. Because Usha doesn't need to say anything. She already has the public on her side. Which brings us to the question no one wants to ask out loud. The question that refuses to go away. Was Usha's pregnancy announcement perfectly timed? Or was it simply life unfolding as it does? Is J.D. hiding something? Or is Erika refusing to accept a reality that no longer includes her? And in a world where perception often matters more than truth, does it even matter what actually happened? Or only what people believe? Because right now, One woman is quietly preparing to welcome a child. And another is watching everything she thought she built slip through her fingers. And history has shown us one thing. When ambition collides with rejection, the fallout is never clean. So the real question is this. Who controls the story now? And who's desperate enough to burn it all down trying to take it back? January light spilled across the screen like accusation. The photo had been sharpened, cropped, shared, messaged and memed until even strangers felt they recognized the hollows beneath Usha's eyes. The woman who once stood beside JD, smiling under stage lights, hair perfectly placed, teeth showing political confidence, now looked reduced to texture and fatigue. Skin washed thin, cheeks hollowed, mouth set in a line that refused to pose. People scrolled and commented as if every sighting were evidence. They rewrote a private life into a headline and then read their own judgments back to themselves. Was this the same woman who'd campaigned in stiletto heels and iron smiles? Had she been replaced by an imposter? Or had the light simply found her in a private moment she was never meant to share? That question, public, hungry, unbidden, was the first in a steady trail the story left behind. People had long whispered about JD and his taste for theatrical conversions of loyalty. He'd spoken once, carelessly, in an interview that was clipped and replayed, about wanting a partner who shared his faith, and he'd named Christianity in a sentence that landed like a shovel. The remark did something very simple and very human. It redefined Usha in the public imagination. No longer just a political spouse, she became a religious test, a point on a checklist JD had apparently been willing to consult under pressure. Which begs a second question. Did JD believe in the conversion, or was conversion itself another tool, a way to signal allegiance to a base that craved purity more than nuance? Was Usha a private woman with private faith, or had she been cast by ambition into a role she never auditioned for? Erika saw the comment as an invitation. Her social media presence, portraits of family breakfasts under sunlight, Bible verses, staged glimpses of a tidy domesticity, had been a billboard announcing her suitability. If JD wanted a Christian woman to stand beside him, Erika's brand said, then she was ready, polished, and on message. Her DMs filled with congratulatory emojis and predictive comments the morning after JD's slip of the tongue hit the feeds. Someone wrote, "Finally JD will have his dream wife," as if destiny were a product to be ordered online. And then one afternoon, Erika's own life resembled a playlist curated for a slow-burn reality show. Photographs of her and JD, once private, resurfaced on gossip sites. Images from dinners, backstage whispers, the kind of photos that exist between two people and no one else. Usha and JD, at public events, looked increasingly like colleagues who tolerated proximity for the sake of optics. Usha's ring had disappeared from her hand at official appearances. She'd miss a smile by a fraction and then hide it like contraband. People noticed. Erika noticed more than anyone. The years of meticulously cultivated online piety became a currency she thought would buy a certain place at JD's side. She had imagined herself in the soft focus frame beside him. Pearls, a baby carriage, a Christian run of campaigns and committees. The dream reinforced itself with each DM and each rally that JD lost to his opponents. She told herself she was a remedy to his slippage. But dreams have a quality of fragile assumption. They are built, secretly, on other people's possibilities. By the time Usha's pregnancy announcement arrived, social media had already made its verdict. Usha posted a photograph, hands gently resting under the swell of new life, the caption careful, neutral, dignified, and the timeline trembled. Here was the question that halted everyone in their scrolling. If the pregnancy dated back to September, when many of the rumors and the Erika, JD whispers were at their loudest, why wait until now to say anything at all? Had Usha known, quietly, intimately, about the life growing inside her whilst rumors of an imminent divorce were traded like sports scores? If so, what did that say about the timing? About strategy? About the ways privacy can be weaponized? The assumption that public figures announce pregnancies only after the first trimester is a rule of modern etiquette at once sensible and strategic. The first 3 months belong to private hope. If Usha had been keeping the news, she had not done so out of negligence but out of calculation. Was the timing political? Was it personal? Or was it something else entirely? An attempt at reclaiming narrative momentum for a couple under pressure? Erika read all of this as a personal slight. More than that, she read it as betrayal. Insiders, people who loved the hum of rumor so much they lived in it, started saying that Erica had receipts. The word spread through feeds and private channels like a promise. Screenshots of DMs, emails, photographs of plane tickets, and intimate images that would, if released, flip private embarrassment into public spectacle. In Erica's telling, JD had promised love and more. In JD's life, Erica was what the tabloids called a side, but Erica's own account framed her as a hopeful co-conspirator who had done nothing wrong beyond placing her faith in someone who could not keep faith. But the receipts did not drop. People began to ask, why not? If Erica had evidence that could bring an unraveling, if she had the cache of screenshots she claimed, why sit on them? Was she bluffing? Were the materials forged? Or was she being cautious, afraid that the release would ricochet, causing more damage to herself than to JD? The ambiguity created a new kind of power. Menace without proof. In the space where receipts were promised but not shown, gossip became accusation with no anchor. The story grew, ballooned, and began to float free of fact. Usha, in the meantime, was an island. She did not react. She took the photographs, wrote the caption, and kept to her duties. She smiled for cameras that sought to mine the hidden. She smiled for children in schools who waved flags at events, and for aides who still treated her like the public persona she was supposed to be. She moved with a trained grace of someone who knew how to survive the glare. JD, for his part, did not flinch either. If neither flinched, then what, observers wondered, did that mean? Who had the control? Who was the axis around which the scandal turned? Had JD always been in control, using both women to place himself at the center of the narrative? Or was Usha a strategist of her own, protecting herself and her unborn child with silence as a shield? A deeper look into the lives of these three women, Usha, Erica, and the politician between them, reveals a topology of power that is rarely clean. Usha's backstory, once a blur beneath campaign photos, is suddenly rich with texture. An immigrant's daughter who learned English from late-night broadcasts, a woman who translated the country's promises for herself and her family. She had married JD in a hush of private ceremonies and public endorsements, her early optimism tempered by the politics of compromise. She had learned, over time, how to make her voice small enough to be acceptable and large enough to be heard when necessary. How did she feel about religion? About JD's public talk of conversion? Did she see it as a bargain to be struck on JD's terms? Or did she have her own spiritual life that adapted as she moved through different rooms and responsibilities? Erica's history was different but not entirely unlike Usha's in one important respect. Both had learned to perform. Erica performed domestic sanctity online because that was the currency that brought community. Her upbringing had been suburban and earnest, a life of church bake sales and PDA drives, where morality was displayed like a banner. But performance always starts from a place of need. Erica wanted not only JD's affection, she wanted the validation he represented, the seal next to his name that, in the public's mind, validated her identity. What are we really searching for when we chase a partner in public life? Is it love, or is it the reflected glow of being chosen? The campaign staff, men and women who spent long shifts moving microphones and empty chairs, muttered privately. They watched Erica grow more volatile after the pregnancy announcement. The narrative, they said, had changed, and she had been left behind. But there were whispers, too, that not all receipts are created equal. A plane ticket or a DM can be made to look the way you need it to be. Screenshots are fragile things. They can be bent into new shapes by Photoshop, by timing, by a memory that insists its own version of events. Then there were the flight logs and the plane tickets. Hard evidence in an era where most evidence is ephemeral. Someone had gathered records, timestamps, gate numbers, blurred boarding passes. They painted a timeline of meetings and missed calls and of a woman in transit between airports and hotel rooms. The receipts, if authentic, formed a map that could be read in multiple ways. But who had drawn the map? Whose hand had placed the pins? It's easy to imagine Erica at a kitchen table at night, phone in one hand, a cup of tea gone cold, the covers to her feeds threaded with messages. Drop them. Do it now. Don't wait. She might have felt power surge through her at the thought of releasing it all. But releasing is an action with consequences. And consequences are messy and often more harmful than the act that supposedly justified them. What was Erica afraid of? Not just of losing JD, That perhaps she could survive. No, she was afraid of being publicly humiliated, of becoming a punchline in a culture that framed women as disposable elements of a man's story. The receipts were a promise of currency. Deploy them and someone would be stopped in their tracks. But currency also needs a market. Who would buy Erica's story? Would the public accept it? Or would they view her as an opportunist, as the woman who tried to trade intimacy for fame? Meanwhile, there were other actors in the story. Consultants, former aides, a PR operative who specialized in quietly burying things. They moved in the background, offering options with the businesslike neutrality of people who understood the cost-benefit analysis of scandal. One suggested legal threats. Another suggested a staged leak to a friendly tabloid to soften the blow. Someone else whispered that sometimes the best way to neutralize a threat is to simply outweight it. And outweighting became a strategy. The public loves a reveal. It's why showrunners draw out seasons for maximum payoff. But in quiet rooms where lawyers work and where reputations are insured, reveal is risk. The operative calculus often favors silence and controlled narrative, releasing a statement, redirecting attention, planting a different story altogether. So the story settled into a triangular standoff. JD continued with rallies and endorsements in a rhythm designed to signal normalcy. Usha's public appearances, laughter with aides, wave to school children, hand rested over a small swell, created a counter-narrative of continuity. Erica made threats and hints, occasionally posting suggestive lines on social media that readers devoured and turned into theories. The feeds proliferated. Some defended Erica, some despised her. Some insisted the pregnancy proved Usha's strategic genius, others argued it was merely timing. And still the receipts remained unpublished. Months passed. The chatter cooled and heated in cycles, like a fever that flares and then subsides. There were times when Erica seemed steady, church posts, family photos with captions about gratitude, and times when she seemed to burn with a private fire, cryptic messages and late-night interviews with lifestyle podcasters. One friend claimed Erica confided in her that the evidence had holes and that some photos were misattributed. Another said Erica had threatened to release the files because she could not bear the humiliation of silence. What did JD feel when he was alone? The public saw only an actor in an ongoing production. On stage, he was dirge and charisma, alternating between controlled anger and practiced empathy. Behind closed doors, he was the man who had built a persona by attending carefully to the details that swayed donors and voters. Was he ashamed? Was he tired of juggling private lives like campaign props? Did he fear a blow that might unsettle his career, or had he already decided this was a tiny turbulence compared to the sweep of his ambitions? And Usha, what did she think as she waited for a potential storm that never came? Did silence feel like strength, or like a slow attrition of dignity? In a culture that measures a woman by her reactions, is refusal to react an act of power or of resignation? The public debated, pundits pontificated, and the women continued in their separate, private orbits. Then, in the quiet that follows a storm front, a new pattern emerged. A small website, nothing very big, not a national outlet but a niche blog that trafficked in long-form gossip, published a tranche of documents. They were, at first glance, fascinating. Flight records overlapping with claimed meetings, screenshots of messages that were raw and messy, a snapshot of a hotel reservation. But with the documents came disclaimers and lawyers' notes, portions unconfirmed, allegations not proven. The post circulated and then stalled. Internet sleuths dove in. People compared messages, cross-referenced timestamps, and argued about whether a number was a day off due to time zones. For every person who claimed the evidence proved JD's indiscretions, there was another person who pointed to anomalies. An altered header here, a missing metadata file there. So what is proof worth in an age where a screenshot can be conjured in an afternoon by someone with motive and Photoshop? What is truth worth when it must compete with the speed of rumor? When you have the receipts, how do you know they are the right receipts? The questions sliced through the story like a scalpel. Months more passed. Erica's hints slowly became less threatening and more performative. At rallies, JD enacted a sort of forward momentum that suggested either obliviousness or a conviction that careers outlive scandals. Usha announced the birth quietly, a photo of a small hand and a caption that read like a public prayer. The feeds erupted briefly. Congratulations, critiques, conspiracies. The story that had been a jagged edge in people's timelines softened into a new domestic image. And yet the memory of the receipts lingered. People kept wondering whether there had been a leak somewhere, whether a message had been withheld until the right moment. They asked if the stakes had been political, whether JD had been protected because his supporters needed him to remain whole, or if the threat had been personal, a woman punished by the court of public opinion for daring to claim a role she had not been granted. Then something else shifted. A former aide came forward to one journalist with a claim that reframed part of the narrative. She said that during the height of the rumors, JD's team had hired a consultant known for managing domestic disruptions. Someone who specialized in research and in building narratives that could be deployed at the right moment. The aide claimed that in the consultant's playbook, sometimes the best way to neutralize a threat was to let it orbit without explosive release, thereby draining its emotional energy and diminishing its market value. Did JD's campaign use the tactic? If so, it was a lesson in the modern politics of distraction. Sometimes silence can be the most effective strategy, not because it hides facts, but because it reshapes the conditions under which they can be weaponized. What remains persuasive in this whole episode is not the confirmed timeline or the contested documents, but the way it reveals the human hunger for simple answers. People prefer a story in which a villain is unmasked and punished, or a hero vindicated, because it reduces complexity to cause and effect. But human lives are messy and often resistant to neat closure. Erica, for all her threats, learned something. In a late-night message to a close friend, one that would later leak in a cleaned-up version to a niche site, she wrote about the loneliness of being visible but not valued. She confessed to shock, anger, and a sense that dignity had been traded for spectacle. But she also acknowledged fear. Fear of being the thing people laughed at when the cameras turned away. Did her desire to expose become a mirror of the same ambition that had drawn her to JD in the first place? Usha's life, after the birth, took on a private cadence that was sometimes obscene in its normalcy. She learned to walk with a stroller through crowds that once applauded her and now nodded with the half-interest of a world that moves quickly from scandal to something fresher. At night, she sat on the couch under a dim lamp and read to her child, a scene so ordinary it could be mistaken for recovery. But recovery is not a straight line, and the public's hunger for drama sometimes waits patiently for the next breach. And JD. He kept running. There were more speeches, strategic endorsements, and the slow architecture of a career that had a strange immunity to the kinds of storms it generated. People who study power know that scandal is often a test of the scaffolding beneath a person. Is the political machine strong enough to weather rumor, or will it collapse? In JD's case, the scaffolding, staffers, consultants, a loyal donor base, helped the machine continue to hum. If anything, the saga left in its wake a set of questions about the nature of intimacy in public life, and about how social media has turned private grief into public theater. How do we hold sympathy and skepticism at the same time? Can we be generous to people who stumble without losing the capacity to ask for accountability when necessary? As the months became a year, the story refracted into smaller narratives. It became a cautionary tale for those who would place too much of their identity in someone else's orbit, a study in how timing can be a strategy, and an illustration of how scarcity, of facts, of proofs, creates value for gossip. But a good story rarely ends cleanly. The receipts were still out there in a drawer somewhere, bits of evidence that might be nothing or everything, depending on who looked and how. Erica sometimes replied to messages with clipped scripture and then posted a photograph of a homemade casserole. Usha sometimes closed her eyes and asked herself quieter questions. Had she been brave or silent? Had she protected something worth protecting, or had she allowed a moral compromise to pass unspoken? And the public. It kept asking its favorite question. Who won? Perhaps the correct answer is that no one truly won. JD retained his public life but not the uncomplicated image he once carried. Usha gained a child and lost a certain kind of privacy. Erica lost the near-certain place beside a public man, but she gained a voice that would not be entirely silenced. It simply found other outlets. The final scene is not a revelation but a return, a photo posted a year later of Usha with her child, in soft morning light. Proof of continuance rather than proof of innocence. The caption reads like a measured prayer and like a question. How do we live when our private lives become public property? And at the bottom of the post, in the feed, someone typed, "Did anyone ever get the receipts?" The question hung there like a coin in the slot of a machine, an invitation to insert hope or cynicism. It was a reminder that, for all the leaks and the lawyers and the blurred photos, the human cost of such stories lives in small moments. Bedtime stories, unshared prayers, the stumble of a woman learning to be more than a title. What would happen the next time someone promised to reveal everything? Would the world lean in again, hungry for clarity, or grow weary of the spectacle and demand something else entirely? Privacy, perhaps, or better yet, mercy? We do not know. The receipts remain a possibility rather than a fait accompli. And in that possibility there is a lesson. The most dangerous currency in public life is not the secret itself, but the promise that it will be used. The promise is what keeps people awake at night, wondering which of their private moments might be the commodity that buys someone else a headline. So we ask again, who really holds power in the space between rumor and proof? Is it the woman who refuses to react, or the woman who threatens? Is it the man whose career needs to appear unbroken? Or is it the public, which finally must decide whether private lives are for entertainment or for shelter? The answer, like many things in the story, remains unfinished.